Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Welcome to episode 125 of Sports Management Podcast. If you are a new listener to this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and leave an honest review. That way you help the show grow, and the bigger the show, the bigger the guests. Thank you. Today's guest is Allistair McCaw. He's an author, speaker, and consultant who helps create world-class mindsets, high-performance leaders, and winning team cultures. He has written 7 books. The latest one was released just after this episode was recorded, and Allistair gave a nice teaser for this book called Mindset Is Your Superpower. If you want to buy this book, see the link in the description. We also spoke about how Allistair grew up in South Africa, what he has learned from his mom, the importance of consistency, suffering from depression, what he has learned from world-class leaders, and much more. Allistair McCaw, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my great pleasure to have you on the show today. You work a lot with leadership, culture, consultancy. You're a speaker. You're also an author. You have written 6 books, I think. And is it more? One more on the go, I know.
Yes, 6 books and the 7th is on its way. Yeah.
So, yeah, I read your latest one very recently. So The Habits That Make a Champion, 50 habits, short chapters, easy to digest, really, really interesting. So can you speak a little bit about how come that you wrote this book?
Yeah, so my first book was 7 Keys That Make a Great Coach, and that was written in 2016. And then the book after that was called Champion Minded, which was more focused at athletes, teams, even coaches, because it's important for a coach to learn the tools and the methods of motivating athletes and getting the best out of them. But Habits That Make a Champion, which is the latest book, is almost like a little sister to Champion Minded. A similar message. What I've found, Marcus, is the generations are changing in terms of how they communicate, how they receive feedback, how they want feedback, etc. So I've been listening to what the market wants and what they respond to best. And that is, as you just mentioned there now, short chapters that are easily digestible, something you can read in 3 to 5 minutes. And to the point, so to say, The Champion Minded was a book written in simplicity in terms of, when I was an athlete, I wanted a book that just gave me the answers of how do I deal with nerves? How do I deal with preparation? How do I deal with an opponent cheating, for example, if I was an athlete? And I couldn't find a really easy, practical book to give me those answers. You'd have books about how the left side of the brain thinks and psychology and so on and so forth. And of course, that has its place. So that was one of the main reasons why I wrote Champion Minded, and of course Habits That Make a Champion, is that there's easy, practical lessons for athletes to take and coaches.
So the Habits to Make a Champion, what I really like about it also is, since this is a sports management podcast, all these skills are for athletes, but they can also be transferable into a business setting.
Absolutely. Building a team culture, working with players, working with team members, working with colleagues, all comes down to the same thing: buying into the vision, buying into the leadership, getting the best out of each other, encouraging each other. It all really comes down to the same thing. I say that, great managers, let's look at football, for example, great managers like Alex Ferguson, Jurgen Klopp, these are people that could run businesses. They're not necessarily sports teams, because it really comes down to the same thing. How do I get the best out of my people? How do we work together for the greater good and the vision? It really is pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah. And also you mentioned in the book that there are so many uncontrollable factors in sports. Like the same goes for business and sports business, definitely. So a lot to be, taken from that book, both if you're an athlete or if you're in a business setting.
Yeah, it's incredible, in fact, the feedback that I've got from it, because it was written, primarily for athletes and coaches. But it's incredible how many people in the business sector have read the book. They possibly also enjoy sports as well, but have just said, this is so relatable to what we do as well in terms of getting the best out of our people and getting the best out of our team. So, yeah, it's been really, really encouraging.
And I work in the hockey business, and you mentioned Michelle Carvin in your book as well, who is now playing in Sweden on the highest level on the women's ice hockey side. And she was talking about, making mistakes, and that she has never won a game without making any mistakes. So the mental work that goes into making a champion as well.
Yeah, top level athletes, we all think that they're, close to perfection and they never make mistakes and so on and so forth. But I've never worked with or been around a high performing athlete or a high performing individual who hasn't made lots of mistakes and has made failures. And in fact, they still continue to do so. They say if you don't make a mistake, then you're not trying or you're not aiming high enough. So, being around Olympians, being around world-class athletes, they're not scared to put it on the line, to take a risk. Rory McIlroy, Roger Federer, all these players will tell you that, not every day is perfect. They're like you and me. We wake up, we have good days, we have bad days. But, the difference between the high performers and the rest is that they can move on quicker from failure. They can move on quicker from mistakes. And the big thing is that they learn from it. I find that people that are not maybe as higher performers kind of want to forget about it. They kind of want to brush it under the carpet and put it away because it's not pleasant to deal with. But the best performing people in business, in sports, are the ones that learn from their failures and are not afraid to make them.
That's really interesting. And on that topic, you said in the book also that you are not born mentally tough. You choose to be. And the most mentally tough person I know of is David Goggins. Are you aware of him?
Yes. I'm aware of his work, yeah.
What is your opinion about him and his mental toughness?
I honestly don't know enough about him, and it's funny that you shouldn't bring him up. I don't enjoy, we all have different types of ways in which we enjoy motivation. He's obviously done incredible things. I've never enjoyed comedy or motivational speeches where there has to be blasphemy, bad language, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I know he's got his followers and he does a great job, motivates a lot of people, inspires a lot of people. But to be honest with you, I haven't read his book. I haven't really watched much of the things. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, his story is incredible, but I see your point that, of course, maybe his way of expressing it doesn't appeal to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fine. We're not everybody's, as they say in England, cup of tea. And that's fine. We all have different people that we enjoy. Not everybody necessarily enjoys my message or the way I write books. And that's fine. We're not going to please everybody.
Of course. You were a professional athlete. So how did you get into sports in the first place?
So I was born in Northern Ireland. We immigrated to South Africa when I was 5. And I had 3 brothers. It was a very, very sporty family as well. We all played lots of sports. Growing up in South Africa during the 80s and 90s, sport was a very big thing in schools. We really had a great sporting culture. We had great facilities at the schools, soccer fields, cricket fields, swimming pools, all these things. It was like a sports academy almost. And these were public schools. So, that is something definitely I was very, very fortunate with. Played 7, 8 sports in school. My first love was tennis. I wanted to be a professional tennis player. Got to a pretty good level, got to top 10 in the under 14s. However, once you get to that stage, it requires more money, more financial investment, coaches, traveling. And we just couldn't afford that at the time either. And back then in South Africa, there wasn't really the support. And of course, there was apartheid as well. So we couldn't really travel and vice versa. Athletes couldn't come to us. So at 14, I stopped playing tennis. I remember one afternoon just looking in the cupboard and all 3 of my tennis rackets had no strings in them because we just didn't have enough money to keep restringing rackets and so on and so forth. It was heavy on my parents. And I decided, well, let's take up running. My mom was a really good 400-meter runner. She was an international athlete. And running came easy to me as well. When I was 16, I won the South African 5,000 meters. I ran like a time of 14:57, and that was when I was like 15, 16. Then from there, went on to compete in triathlons. My swimming was always pretty weak, so I decided to do duathlon, which is run, bike, run. And got to really have a really good career. I competed in 5 world championships. I got to travel and see a lot of the world. I competed in Europe a lot, in the Netherlands, Italy, France, Germany, where I raced for teams there as well. So I was super lucky to be able to say I had a career in sports.
So I'm curious why do you think that your parents chose South Africa?
Well, I mean, growing up in Northern Ireland, they obviously had their troubles as well. Back in the time, obviously the divide, the religious divide there as well, unfortunately. So they wanted to give us boys a better life. Probably the weather was a big factor as well. We know that Northern Ireland and the UK is not exactly the Bahamas in terms of weather. So South Africa was great weather. Like I said, very fortunate that we could play sports pretty much all year round outside. I think one of their second choices were Canada and Australia as well. But we ended up in South Africa, and I'm very happy we did.
And I know I read somewhere that you said that you need the sun, and you live in Florida now, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that was a good choice.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes we complain that it's too hot and too humid, but when I go overseas and go to Europe for a week, and I'm in the UK, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get back to some sunshine. So definitely, I believe I'm solar powered, because I really do feel that weather does play a massive influence on your energy. I know for me it did. Living in Europe during those cold winter months, it was tough. Maybe I was just spoiled with growing up in South Africa with so much sunshine. But yeah, live in Florida now, which super, super lucky. And obviously the sun shines pretty much all day. I live in Florida, which is called the Sunshine State. So yeah.
No, I agree with you totally. I am born and raised in Sweden, but I lived 5 years in Greece. And the comparison, Southern Europe to Northern Europe, it's big in terms of sunlight.
Yeah, Greece. I'd love to go to Greece. It's definitely one country I haven't been to yet that I'd love to go to. So that's definitely on the bucket list. Sweden, I have been to. Beautiful country. I think I was only in Stockholm for a day, so I didn't even get a chance to see much. But I think we drove from Oslo across that bridge across the water.
It might have been Copenhagen that you went over, right?
It was from Copenhagen, correct, in Denmark. I think I was in a place called Odesnik or something in Denmark, and then we drove across. Yeah.
No, that's a nice trip.
Definitely.
If you don't mind talking about it, I read you suffered from a severe depression in 2002. What led up to this? What was the reasons? And, how did you work your way through that?
Yeah, so there was a few factors. And interesting, you should bring up the one before, which was about sunlight and sunshine. I was living in London at the time. I'd finished my athletic career. I was struggling to get into to finding a work that I enjoyed as well. It was just very difficult. Financially also was challenging. So there was a few factors there. Financially is a big one. If you're struggling, that can have a massive effect on you. I was struggling to find the right job as well. So I was doing jobs in between, which I didn't necessarily enjoy. And I'd never had that. I never had that before. And then, of course, the weather. I'd be spending time indoors and looking, and outside it was gray weather, and I wasn't working enough. I just didn't find I had a big enough purpose as well at that time. I was a little bit lost after my career. I thought it would be an easy transition. I'll find something because I was a professional athlete and so on and so forth. And it was a big wake up call, Marcus, where not everybody's going to be calling you or knocking on your door after your career. And this is something that's helped me help other athletes. Again, Champion Minded, the book, one of the chapters I think near the end is called Identity Crisis, where you've been an athlete all your life. You've been known as Marcus, the hockey player, or Kim, the squash player all your life in this. And now all of a sudden you're Kim, or you're just Marcus. You're no longer the great squash player or the great hockey player, for example. And that was a little bit my challenge as well. So it was, I share that with as many people as I can about depression. I all feel that a lot of us do experience some form of depression. It can be low, it can be high forms of depression, like I had, where it carried on for months. And yeah, it was a really, really difficult and challenging situation. And I had it a few years later, probably 2009, 2010 again. in my life as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I read that you relapsed in 2009. So
Yeah.
was that you hadn't really bounced back, or was there something else that triggered it in 2009 again?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was struggling in my marriage as well. I went through a divorce financially again, just after the 2008 recession, where the economy collapsed. That took a massive hit on my business as well. So everything came together there again. But I was a little bit better equipped the second time to deal with it than the first time, where I was just in uncharted waters. I was this positive athlete where the world was, at my feet, and then all of a sudden I was completely lost my identity. Yeah, it happened again in 2009.
Or not only identity, but you lost a lot of weight also, I saw. So it took mentally and physically on you, right?
Yeah, it did. I think I lost probably, I think it was like 30 pounds, which was, 15, 16 kilograms maybe. And I'm not a big guy either. So, that had a massive effect on me. I remember, back then we didn't really have the technology so much of speaking on video phone or Zoom. We had Skype, I think, maybe back then. But it was one conversation I had with my mother, who was back in South Africa at the time, and I was in London. And I think she got the shock of her life when she saw me. And she gave me 2 bits of advice. And they were the best bits of advice I ever received in terms of my path back. And that was, it had a lot to do with purpose, but it had a lot to do with self-image. And the first bits of advice that she said was, when you wake up in the morning, you brush your hair and you put on clean clothes. Because when you're experiencing depression, when you're in this dark place, you don't care. You feel horrible, you look horrible, you just don't care. You put no effort into yourself. And it's very easy to spiral into that pity party of like, woe is me and life's not fair and so on and so forth. And here's the truth, is that life is not fair. Get used to it. And then the second one was, go outside and be of service to one person or one thing today. So go volunteer at the church, go help somebody with their groceries, go whatever, but go and do something, have a purpose. So self-image and purpose. Those were the catalysts to my recovery from depression. It just started with those 2 small things. A lot of the time, sometimes we get overwhelmed with the advice and how long the road is going to be back to recovery, where all you need to do is start with 1 or 2 simple things a day. If you can, for me, putting my head on the pillow at night, those 2 things were achievement. Those were my wins for the day. And to somebody else, that might be like, that's nothing. But when you're in that state of mind, 1 or 2 wins a day, no matter how small, can definitely create that effect. I think it was Pep Lijnders, the assistant coach at Liverpool at the moment. He said, the small things make the big things happen.
Yeah. So this experience, and now we talked about you have written 6 books. A lot of it talks about, mental toughness or breath work or how to improve yourself. How much of that experience led you to now write these books and help others?
Yeah. If we look back at Champion Minded, that was a book written with the goal of giving athletes and coaches practical answers. Again, short chapters, easy, simple messages. And this is something I've discovered, Marcus, being around the best leaders, the best coaches, is that they really keep things simple. And that's been one of my goals in writing the books, is keeping things as simple as possible. But Champion Minded is all about, they call the 10 things that require 0 talent. And I wouldn't be able to reel those 10 off at once, but we're talking about your attitude is a controllable. Your work ethic is a controllable. Your preparation is a controllable. Your effort is a controllable. All these things that require zero talent, that's what Champion Minded is. You don't need to be the most talented, skilled player or person on the field or in the office, for example. But if you're willing to, get in early, work hard, bring a great attitude, do the extra work that's required, you're going to succeed in whatever field that is.
You have surrounded yourself with great leaders and people who have achieved greatness since you were around 15, 16. What do you think that has given you?
Yeah, I've been super lucky from a very young age to be around really good leaders, good coaches, good team captains as well. But I think one thing I've learned amongst many is, even these great coaches that we know about, that work with, great football teams, international athletes, Coach K being one of them, of Duke basketball and USA basketball, is that they don't have it all. We think that these great coaches and leaders have all the skills. They know everything, which is not true. They really have, they're all unique. They're all different. They all have a different style of leadership as well. They have a different identity in their leadership, but they all really hone in on one or two strengths of theirs and they maximize them. Nick Bollettieri, the famous tennis coach, is someone who I got to spend a lot of time around as well, is that motivation. He was the greatest motivator I knew. He could pull anybody out of a losing streak or a slump and make them win like within, an hour, a second. That was really impressive about that. Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski at Duke basketball, just the relationship he would have with his players, also his ability to adapt, being successful, 1 or 2 seasons is one thing, but being successful over a period of 40 seasons, 40 years, which is, we look at Sir Alex Ferguson as well. That's, for me, that is success, sustained success. You might pull off a great season. You had a lucky season or a one-off season. But, these coaches, like, as I was mentioning, Coach K, the ability to adapt to different players, to the seasons, no season was the same. Even if they had a championship winning season before, they wouldn't copy and paste. They know that the competition would be onto them. They'd have to change their tactics. They'd have to change certain things. So they evolved. Great leaders, great coaches evolve. So those are just some of the things I've seen in, great coaches, great leaders. And like I said, just, earlier, they really keep things simple. They're very close to the fundamentals. In my book, 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, key number 6 is fundamentals, is that they don't veer away from the fundamentals and get fancy and so on and so forth. They're really, they stick to the old basics. I remember spending time with David Ledbetter, the professional golf coach who's worked with many major winners. And I remember watching one of his sessions, and it was just simple. It was just fundamentals. It was really almost like you beginning. He was working with, who's now the number one, the number one female player, Nelly Korda, her sister Jessica. And it was really just back to basics: stance, grip, head, position, all these things. Nothing fancy. And that's something I've noticed in the best coaches and leaders.
Master the fundamentals.
Exactly.
And I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson, as you said, what a run he had. And also to see the void he left at Manchester United. And now recently the Beckham documentary came out. So you got a little bit of glimpse in there, what he meant for David's career. So what a man, what a leader.
Fascinating. I'm reading actually another book on Sir Alex Ferguson right now. And I've got in my bookshelf there one of my favorite books, which is Leading from Sir Alex Ferguson. But yeah, just incredible also to speak to some of the players. I've spoken to Phil Neville, a few times and about Sir Alex, and Gordon Strachan as well, who was a great Manchester United player who went on to be also a good coach as well. But it was just fascinating how he was always, as Phil Neville says, he was always driving the bus. He was always ahead of the game. He was always thinking about next season, what they would need, what players they would need, and very interesting at what coaches they would need for those players. So if you noticed in Sir Alex Ferguson's leadership, he rotated his coaches every 3 or 4 seasons. If you look at the coaches that he had, René Meulenstein, Carlos Queiroz, Steve McLaren, they rotated every 2 or 3 years or so abouts to work with the different players. Sir Alex was a genius. He brought in Carlos Queiroz initially, and he says that Carlos Queiroz is probably the best coach that he's worked with, to bring in Ronaldo because they're both Portuguese. So there was always this strategy and things that maybe we didn't see from the outside, but he was an absolute genius.
I'm sure. And you have also worked closely with Steven Gerrard, right?
Not necessarily close with Steven, but been to the teams that Steven's been with. I know Michael Beale very well, who and Jordan Milsom, who were at Glasgow Rangers as well, and Aston Villa, and now they're in Saudi Arabia, which I'm heading out there in 2 weeks' time as well to visit the team. So Steven, not so much. More the coaching staff, more Michael, who's actually left Glasgow Rangers now. So, but observing Stephen as well around, the training facilities at Glasgow Rangers when he was there, and Aston Villa as well. Just a great leader, great with people. He's very peripheral vision in terms of what's going on in the field, just like he was when he played. He's like that in the building. He knows what's going on all around him. Also, I would just watch him, how he would move around the tables in the restaurant, speaking to the players, how he would adapt his message and his approach to different players as well. This is something I also saw in Leighton Hewitt, the former number one tennis player from Australia. When I was working with some of the Australian tennis players, and we spent time with Leighton, so we were on the road, and we were in Indian Wells, California, and Leighton was just becoming the Davis Cup coach. I think it was almost in line. And I watched how he was able to adapt his approach to the different players. Nick Kyrgios was there at the time, Bernard Tomic, Sam Groh, these type of players. Just when you observe these great leaders and these great captains like Leighton is, you see how well they can adapt to the person. And Steven Gerrard was like that as well.
I'm sure. And I mean, you have consulted Olympic gold medalists, Grand Slam champions, Fortune 500 companies, NCAA colleges, professional sports teams. I mean, these are the highest performers. When we talk about like the mindset and the mental part, how different is it to consult with this athlete versus someone who is not an elite athlete? What are the biggest differences?
It comes down to one word for me: consistency. Is that these high performers are not, there's no such thing as perfect. So they get things wrong. They make mistakes, as we spoke about, but they learn from them. But they have more consistency in their habits. They have more consistency in their attitude as well, which is a big one, because like I said, sometimes we're going to have good days, bad days, but they're still able to bring a better attitude, consistency in their routines, consistency in their preparation, consistency in the way they go about their daily things. So that would be the standout difference for me. I like to say that the average performers do it sometimes, the good performers do it most of the time, the great performers do it all of the time. They're consistent in these things. And it's not the big things, Marcus. They're consistent in the small little things. They have a monomaniacal focus on details, on doing the small things really well, which other people find boring or maybe not important. Something I was taught from my mom was, it's not just about making your bed, Allistair, it's how you make your bed. And all these years later, when I make my bed, and I also make my bed in the hotels as well, I refuse to have somebody make my bed. That voice is always, would my mom approve of this? Is my bed made properly? Like they say, how you are in the small things is how you are in the big things.
Yeah. I will just quickly, I'm taking up my phone here because I tweeted something today on that topic. So Picasso created one piece every day from he was 20 years old until he was 91. Consistency beats talent.
There you go. I love that. I've never heard that one, so I like that. I actually wish, my next book has gone off to editing, but I wish I'd actually heard that one before it went off, because it's, off to publishing. So, yeah, nice.
I don't remember where I read it, but I picked it up and I think it's really good.
Picasso, huh? So he did something consistently every day from the age of 21 to 90, he said.
Yes, he created at least one piece every day from he was 20 to he was 91. And then, it can be a small painting or it can be, a sculpture or whatever. But he did something every day for 71 years.
Yeah. I think it was George Raveling who's been a great mentor for me as well. And I've never met George. And here's the thing, everybody thinks that mentors are people that you need to know or speak to face-to-face, or not. I have many mentors. Sir Alex Ferguson is a mentor for me, but I've never met him. But he mentors me through his books, and people I follow on Twitter that are inspirational, those are mentors for me as well. But it's incredible just to learn from such people, and I believe every day, if you don't get up with the mindset of wanting to learn just one new thing today, what's the point?
That's true. And it seems like you have learned quite a lot from your mom also. You have referenced her quite some time. So what has her importance been on you in your life?
Yeah, I I've just, maybe I'm being biased, but I've got the best mom ever. I'm so grateful that she's still here. Of course, I spoke to her this morning on the way to pickleball, a sport I play here in the mornings in Florida. You know, they say that no one will love you like a mom, and that's so true. But yeah, she's just been an incredible inspiration and example, and bringing up 3 boys, and not once has she never not picked up the phone when I've called her. And I think something that really spoke to me probably about 10 or 15 years ago, Marcus, was, I was complaining the one day that my mom had sent me this long WhatsApp message, and I was like, can't my mom just write a short message, And the person said to me, well, one day that name won't pop up on your phone. And it like hit me, you know what I mean? That they were right, that one day that person will not be there. Of course, none of us can guarantee who's here today or tomorrow. But definitely every time my mom sends a message or a call, I respond straight away.
Yeah. Do you know who Jesse Itzler is?
Yes, I enjoy Jesse. Yeah.
Me too. So he was talking on a podcast, and he said that, how often do you see your parents? I see them twice a year because they were living abroad. Let's say they have 20 more years to live. Then it's not that you have 20 years with them, it's that you have 40 times with them.
I remember that. So the average American lives to 78. So I remember that one. He said, I think he was speaking to Lewis Howes or maybe someone about that on a podcast. And he said, how old are they? No, he asked Lewis, how old are your parents? And he said, 60, whatever. And he said, okay, well, the average American lives to 78. So let's say they've got 18 years. How often do you see them? Once, twice a year. Okay, you've got 36 more visits. And when you see it like that, or, it puts things in perspective. And that's great that you brought up that message, Jesse, because that still speaks to me in terms of, if you had to put it in that way, yeah, it puts it in perspective.
Are you practicing gratitude in any way on this topic?
Yeah. One of the things I established, so building habits, and I speak about this in my new book as well, is I believe that a habit takes 90 days to build and only 9 days to lose. So I call it the 99 habit rule. So I put this to the test in terms of building the habit of gratitude. Okay. We talk about it, but how do we do it? So this is what I did. I got a stick-it note and I wrote gratitude on it, and I stuck it next to my bedside lamp next to my bed. And every morning I woke up, the first thing I would see is gratitude, the word gratitude. And I would think of 2 things I was grateful for straight away. So before I get out of bed in the morning, I think of 2 things I'm grateful for. It can be anything. The sun shining through the curtains, the warm bed that I slept in, what I was going to be doing that way, I was grateful for. So it put me in that frame of mind. So over a period of 90 days of looking at this note, I learned that I no longer needed that cue. I no longer needed that note to remind me of gratitude. And I probably did this about, I would say, 3 years ago. And still to this day, when I wake up, the first thing that comes into my mind is the word gratitude still. So I'll be able to ingrain that habit over and over consistently over that time. And, always say, start your day in gratitude. And I've been able to achieve that through this simple stick-it note for 90 days. And then when I wake up, I think of gratitude.
I love that. The small things that helps.
Consistency,
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
There are so many things that we could discuss. This podcast can go on for hours.
We're going to do part 2.
Yes, and I so want to do part 2, and let's wait until your next book will be released. So, but is there something I haven't asked you yet that you feel is important to mention?
Mental health is another thing, and I know we touched on it in this episode as well. But I think it's important for everyone to know that everybody is struggling with something right now. You're not immune. You're not alone. Something that helped me through my times of depression was speaking about it and not bottling it up. I think that's what I learned from the second time was being more open and not being ashamed of it. But I think understand that everybody is going through something that you don't know about. All of us, no matter how perfect their life looks on the outside, me included. And I think we just need to be, try and be more compassionate, more understanding that there's a reason why somebody is maybe behaving the way they are or the way they are. So, yeah, I think that would be something I would add.
not to judge someone maybe if they are behaving in a way, but see behind that layer, maybe there's a reason for this behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And this, I think maybe this is something I've just come to learn more and more and more, is not to, it's so easy for us to judge people. In fact, there was a study done that we judge people within 7 seconds in terms of looks, financial status, energy, all these things. Within 7 seconds, we have made our mind up about somebody if we like them or not. That's how quickly our brain processes this information. So definitely, it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey of trying to catch yourself not being as judgmental about people, and remember that everybody's different and everybody's going through something that we have no clue about.
I'm really appreciative that you took the time today. I have a final tradition on this podcast, and it is, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
Definitely Phil Jones, a good friend of mine, who's also the managing director of Brother UK, Brother Technologies, an avid cyclist as well. I think his brother also sponsors some of the top cycling teams in the UK as well. So he has a lot of knowledge in the sports world, the sports management world, and of course in leading people. But I've been super fortunate to have dinners with Phil and speak with him and be mentored by him as well. So I think that would be a great guest for you.
Definitely. Sounds really interesting. Allistair, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. And those are really great questions. So thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportmpodcast.